When you think about the greatest scams in history, the likes of the Ponzi scheme or the BitConnect might pop in your head, but I bet you'd never think someone managed to actually sell the Eiffel Tower. Twice. Neither did Victor Lustig until he ideated the best sales pitch in history. Everything started with one of his most renowned cons, the Romanian box, or as he used to name it in front of his investors, the magic box. A tailored wooden box made to him by one of his many friends, then claimed that said box could somehow duplicate money.
Now, any fool would understand that's a trap, right?
Well, when you're selling something, there's one thing that's truly irreplaceable: confidence. One of the things men like Victor do not lack. His plan was simple but quite deceptive. Befriend a gullible rich guy, make him think you have a magic box that produces money, sell him the box. Sounds easy enough, right? Wrong. Something like this takes balls of steel and a genius-level understanding of the social structure that surrounds you. Anyways, he'd approach a very rich and gullible man or a gambler that just had his lucky night, then befriend him. Become truly his target's best friend for that night, lower their guard, and while having the night of their lives, he'd hint at having a magic box that prints $100 bills, and then proceed to just refuse further talk about that subject for the rest of the night, which would make the gullible target even more curious about this strange story. Our friend, let's call him Mark, is now going to wonder how that machine works and why this man won't talk about it for the whole night, driving him slowly but surely closer and closer to insanity. Okay, maybe not insanity, but Mark's really going to want to know more about this crazy magic box. So eventually Victor would give him exactly what he wanted. The two would meet in Victor's hotel room where the show would begin. Firstly, you'd want to have one of the two bills already hidden inside the box, then insert the one that is supposed to be duplicated as well, while carefully showing the process to our friend Mark. Then proceed in waiting for 6 hours for the process to be completed. In this spare time, you can do whichever action your heart desires: eat, drink, watch despicable content on YouTube, maybe take your dog for a walk, or finally get that thing that you always postpone done, or even text your boss, or, oh look, the box is done. Now carefully take the second dollar bill from where you had hidden it inside the box and show it to the gullible Mark over there and get your deserved praises for a job well done. The next step should be pretty simple, since you've been hinting all night that you need money and you need it now for whatever excuse your mind came up with. You'll be complaining again about your magic box taking too long at doing its job, at which point our friend Mark will come up with an incredibly smart and unpredictable solution. He'll try to buy the magic box off of you, so you agree on a fair price. Well, the price our friend Mark can afford, then sell him your great invention, and since your magic box takes 6 hours to not produce anything, you can use that time to get the hell out of town. Great job, you've done it. You have conned Mark. He might have just given you his kid's college money, but you don't care. His kid was probably as stupid as he is, right? Wrong, or at least that's what hopefully you and I think. But that's not the case for Victor, though. You know, he might seem like a very cheerful and happy and careless guy, but he hasn't always been that way. You see, he wasn't very open about his true origins, even though he loved talking about the fake ones. In the end, he did confess where he and his family actually came from, a very poor village named Hostin. As for his parents, as he described them, the poorest peasant people, who could barely scrape enough to get food and clothes and eventually had to leave his cares in the hands of other family members. Though they were not very successful, since at the age of 13, Victor ended up homeless in the streets of Paris, leaving his education behind and having to live off scraps, pickpocketing, and begging. Now, I might be summarizing a bit too much here, but imagine being in this guy's shoes. You're 10 years old, going to school wearing literal scraps, barely even eating, and kids are laughing at you. Then your parents tell you you're going to move to Paris with your relatives, which you don't even really know. So you're finally getting some hope of a better life, but when you arrive, your new carer barely even notices your existence. You still have little to no money, and kids are still laughing at you. Would you not feel bitter and resentful towards the world? I guess he must have thought something like that, because records showed that by the age of 17, he was masterful in pickpocketing, card tricks, rigging card games, and had quite the deceptive voice and personality. So, surprisingly, most of the victims of the magic box trick never really talked about it. I mean, what are you going to tell people? But one of his customers remained quite unhappy about the purchase and started following him across America. Her name was Billy Mae Scheibel, although once she got a hold of him, let's say it was hard to let go. The two became lovers and crime partners, and his love life was quite astonishing. The guy apparently had a wife, a daughter, a secret family, and a millionaire lover. Yeah, Billy had a $1 million prostitution racket. Anyways, it's with Billy that Victor started the big game hits. Soon after they found each other, it became international news that the Eiffel Tower had become harder and harder to manage, which meant that, and I quote, "it would cost less to the French government to destroy it than to maintain it," which sounded like liquid gold to Victor's ears. In a matter of days, Victor had already planned out how to sell the thing and started contacting his old French buddies, pushing them in to get him government official documents. Once again, his plan was simple. Portrait as a French government official, then get a hold of 6 of the richest scrap dealers in France, as one does, then proceed in giving a huge sales pitch on the Eiffel Tower and the many concerns in produces the French government, like how costly it is to maintain and how unaesthetic it will end up looking without maintenance. Now, Victor is no fool. He had studied the Eiffel Tower's structure to the last bolt, but what every man in that room was interested in hearing was one number: 7,000. 7,000 tons of reusable metal. Once that got out of Victor's mouth, every man in that room got ecstatic. It basically became a bidding event. They eventually settled for a hefty price of 250,000 francs, which would come around $1 million in today's money. The lucky buyer's name was André Poisson, but you know Victor, he'll dry you up for as much as you have. So he made sure to get a fat old bribe from him as well. Then cashed out the check and ran off to Vienna, waiting to hear about his new accomplishment in the news. But nothing came out. Apparently, Andre kept the thing to himself, most probably out of shame. And I don't blame him. He just lost $1 million to a con man. Not an easy thing to tell your buddies, is it? The thing is, Victor didn't stop there. He was ready to suck this whole situation dry. In fact, the next week he came back to Paris and did it again. Since no one got the news out, he used the same strategy on 6 different scrap dealers, getting a very similar deal and doubling his earnings. Though this time the news got out, so he ran back to New York as a rich man, and most importantly, as the man who sold the Eiffel Tower. Twice. That's where his problems began. Once back in New York with a new fortune, you'd think he'd lay back a little, right? Not Victor Lustig, that's not how he does it. In fact, he went ahead and made a deal with Al Capone himself, asking and receiving funding for another scam, which he never really intended to do. So, anyways, his business life wasn't the only thing he didn't take down a notch. In fact, other than his 2 families and his millionaire lover, he kept having affairs with younger women. And I guess karma decided to hit back at him because that last sin didn't quite sit right with Billy May. Yeah, the end of his career came with an anonymous call to the authorities from an angry woman. Well, there's also the time he bribed a policeman with counterfitted money, which didn't help. Neither did his $1 million counterfeited money empire, but the call from Billy May was definitely the straw that broke the camel's back. After that, he got caught by the authorities and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Though Victor proved himself quite resourceful even while detained, because he managed to escape from the federal detention headquarters by fashioning several bed sheets into a rope and slipping out the window while casually wiping the windows as he shimmied down the building. Dozens of passers-by saw him, and even after all that, he decided not to lay low and keep pulling off other scams. He eventually did get caught in Pittsburgh a month later and was sentenced to 20 years of prison in Alcatraz. He eventually died in quite a silent way. In fact, we only know of his death from his brother, Emil Lustig, who announced that Victor had died of pneumonia sometime in 1947.